True power operates subtly, not through loud displays but through quiet influence. It doesn't clamor for attention. It naturally commands it. In a world saturated with noise, status, and spectacle, the most potent force within any setting isn't the loudest voice, but the one that remains composed, deliberate, and inscrutable. This embodies the core of Machiavellian wisdom. While violence is overt, intelligence operates silently. Where others react with anger, lash out impulsively, or seek validation through attention to demonstrate their strength, the strategist takes a different approach. They observe, listen, and calculate. Their actions, when taken, are not for show, but to conclude the contest before it truly begins. Those who loudly assert themselves often betray their underlying fears, and those who issue threats reveal their weaknesses. Conversely, the individual who maintains emotional neutrality, whose mere presence can shift the atmosphere of a room, wields genuine power. Machiavelli profoundly understood this principle, recognizing that while brute force might secure a temporary victory, psychological invulnerability is what ultimately wins broader conflicts. When you transcend the need for self-validation, your demeanor changes. You remain unaffected by insults because silence amplifies their emptiness. You don't openly declare hostility. Instead, you allow your adversary to become consumed by uncertainty, imagining your potential actions. This form of power isn't forged in the public eye, but through restraint, self-mastery, patience, and the capacity to anticipate future moves while others remain fixated on immediate reactions. True strength lies in preserving inner equilibrium amidst external chaos. It's about discerning that the most enduring energy isn't a fleeting burst of intensity, but a steady, unwavering force that outlasts all others. To embody this level of control means becoming impervious, not through cruelty or detachment, but by refusing to be governed by emotions. You learn to wield silence as a weapon, allowing your composure to unsettle those who mistake your stillness for weakness. Crucially, you recognize that the most influential presence isn't the one who shouts, but the one whom everyone watches silently, pondering their thoughts. This isn't intimidation through force, but dominance through mastery. Once this mindset is adopted, the need to fight for respect diminishes. You simply become someone others will not dare to challenge. In any conflict, objective truth takes a back seat to perception. The battleground doesn't initially involve physical confrontation, but rather the narrative being constructed, the image being projected, and the story being believed. Machiavelli understood that people are driven not by facts, but by appearances. He wrote, "Men judge more by the eye than by the hand, for everyone can see you, but few can truly understand you." Therefore, the fundamental rule in any confrontation is clear: control the optics, and you control the outcome. When you project an image of strength, calmness, and unwavering resolve, even if your internal state is different, others will hesitate. This hesitation provides your opportunity. It's not about who is factually correct or physically stronger. What matters is who appears to be in control. Those who understand Machiavellian principles know how to perform under pressure. They remain still while others panic. They smile when threatened, and they listen intently before strategically twisting their opponent's words. In this arena, appearances are not superficial. They are strategic assets. The individual who shapes the narrative dictates the terms of engagement. In business, politics, and personal rivalries, the most composed presence often prevails by default. If you appear emotional, reactive, or unstable, even the truth will not serve you. However, if you project an image of focus, detachment, and poise, even falsehoods can be believed in your favor. This isn't manipulation for malicious purposes, but strategic positioning in a world that often values illusion over reality. You don't need to overpower your adversary physically. You only need to appear untouchable. Allow them to seem erratic while you remain silent. Let them argue in your presence while you respond with stillness. In a world where self-mastery is rare, Those who achieve it appear almost godlike. This is because when you control how you are perceived, you control how you are treated, and in confrontation, that is more potent than any weapon. Directly confronting someone often intensifies resistance and exposes your vulnerabilities. However, reshaping the environment in which the conflict occurs fundamentally alters the dynamics. Instead of trying to force someone to change their nature, the true strategist subtly modifies the surrounding conditions, making their desired action the most logical and predictable next step. This is the essence of environmental manipulation. You don't fight against a person's inherent traits, but subtly adjust the rules of engagement so that their decisions align with your strategy, almost as if they are acting naturally under a new set of constraints. Consider it like rearranging pieces on a chessboard. You might not eliminate an opponent outright, but you can strategically position obstacles, close off escape routes, and guide their moves into a position where every choice disadvantages them. When deadlines shift, resources deplete, or alliances crumble due to unforeseen circumstances, it is not raw power that secures victory. Rather, it is the gradual, systematic manipulation of the conditions under which conflicts unfold. Every business negotiation, every political maneuver, and every personal rivalry is won by those who grasp that controlling the environment holds far greater sway than attempting to reform an opponent's character. Instead of engaging in direct confrontation, which only intensifies emotions and invites unpredictable retaliation, you seize control of time, space, and circumstances. Rescheduling meetings, altering budgets, isolating support networks. All these subtle adjustments are designed to disrupt their momentum and erode their strength before they even recognize the shift. By reframing a scenario, you compel your adversary to adapt under new rules, often leading them to make errors or betray their initial intentions. By focusing on the external, tangible aspects of conflict rather than the chaotic inner workings of a person's mind, you establish a controlled battleground where your calculated pace and rhythm dictate the outcome. This approach is not merely defensive. It involves constructing an arena where your enemy is compelled to act in ways that ultimately serve your objectives. In this strategy, success is measured not by outright victory, but by the transformation of the conflict environment itself, ensuring that every decision made within it tilts in your favor. Sometimes, the most lethal move is to appear harmless. In a world that values overt power, the greatest threat is the one that remains unseen. Machiavelli understood that the predator who roars prematurely invites caution, but the one who feigns weakness, apologizes, and plays the fool disarms the room, and that is when the trap is sprung. To feign weakness is not to be weak. It is to master the art of misdirection. It is to allow your enemy to relax, underestimate you, expose their strategy, and lower their defenses, all while you quietly prepare your strike. This is not cowardice. It is calculated warfare, an understanding that the scalpel cuts deeper than the sword, and precision will always outlast brute force. Machiavelli wrote that a ruler must learn to be both the lion and the fox, strong enough to destroy, clever enough to deceive. When you pretend to retreat, to submit, to apologize, do so without relinquishing your intention. Let them believe they have won. Let them lower their guard. Let them become arrogant, because arrogance breeds blindness, and in that blindness lies your advantage. Your power grows not in retaliation, but in restraint. You are not retreating. You are resetting the stage for a more devastating blow. The true masters of confrontation do not win by emotional outbursts. They win by silent timing. The moment of greatest power often arrives when they least expect it, when they believe you are weak, broken, or disarmed. That is when you strike, not wildly, not noisily, but precisely where it hurts most, where recovery is impossible, where retaliation is too late. When executed correctly, the opponent never even witnesses the war begin, only that it is already over. To feign weakness is to weaponize humility. It is to remain underestimated until it is too late, and in that delay, You seize control of both time and outcome. You don't simply defeat your enemy, you guide them into your victory. If you must confront, finish it decisively. Half measures are not mercy, they are invitations for retaliation. A wounded enemy is far more dangerous than a defeated one because pain breeds obsession, and obsession breeds revenge. Machiavelli warned that if you allow an adversary to walk away with even a shred of dignity, influence, or support, they will return stronger, smarter, and hell-bent on vengeance. The only way to end a confrontation is to leave no path back to power. This is not cruelty. It is survival in a world where people rarely forgive true humiliation. You must choose closure or consequences. Destroying completely doesn't always mean physical ruin. It means psychological finality, cutting off access, silencing their influence, erasing their leverage. In personal conflict, that may mean blocking, ghosting, and burning bridges without apology. In business or politics, this could entail removing not just your opponent, but also their allies, resources, and narrative. The objective isn't punishment. It's the prevention of recurrence, because unresolved conflict doesn't dissipate. It festers. True power demands decisiveness. When you hesitate, they plot. When you show mercy, they take notes. When you settle for compromise, they gather strength in the shadows. But when you strike with finality, without drama or emotion, communicate one undeniable truth: there will be no round two. Let them fear the silence that follows your move. Let the uncertainty haunt them. Make the example so stark, so clean, that no one else dares to test you. The most effective confrontation is the one that never needs repeating, because no one is left with the courage to continue it. This isn't about dominance for ego's sake. It's about safeguarding your peace, about never having to look over your shoulder. The untouchable don't leave avenues for return. They don't explain their departures. They act once with precision and never revisit the battlefield because they understand that true victory doesn't stem from defeating the enemy, but from eradicating the possibility of their resurgence. True fear doesn't arise from threats. It comes from introspection. Machiavelli understood that the most potent way to control an adversary isn't by direct attack, but by allowing them to confront their own inner darkness. Instead of raising your voice or issuing threats, you present a mirror. You remain silent, and in that silence, they begin to see what they fear most: themselves. This isn't intimidation through violence or noise. It's about creating an atmosphere so unsettling that they question their own security without you ever laying a hand on them. People fear uncertainty more than confrontation. When you don't respond, they fill in the blanks. When you don't deny rumors, they assume their veracity. When you let them ponder your potential actions, not your definite ones, you cultivate a psychological landscape where possibility becomes the weapon. In that ambiguity, fear takes root and flourishes more rapidly than any threat you could articulate. Let your silence resonate louder than their accusations. Let them overthink every quiet moment. Allow their imagination to be their own undoing long before you need to act. Machiavelli didn't advise being feared. He said, let others believe you might be capable of things they wouldn't risk testing. That's the brilliance of the psychological mirror. It reflects not who you are, but what they project. And what they project often reveals their own guilt, fear, and instability. In a world addicted to reaction, your stillness is unnerving. Your unpredictability becomes your power. The person who cannot be deciphered is more dangerous than the one who shouts. You don't need to terrify them. You only need to let them terrify themselves, because when someone's fear originates from within, they cannot escape it. This is how genuine power is wielded, not through force, but through invisibility. You haunt not out of malice, but because you've learned that the mind left alone with sufficient silence becomes its own executioner. That's how the untouchable prevail, not through destruction, but through quiet suggestion and the lingering fear it engenders. In an era of instant gratification and reactive living, Patience has become a superpower. Machiavelli understood that time is not to be feared or squandered. It's a weapon to be honed. The wise do not rush into conflict. They bide their time, observe, and calculate because time, when employed strategically, achieves what no sword ever could: wears down, isolates, exposes, and ultimately delivers victory without chaos. Most people crave immediate results, instant revenge, instant control. However, urgency is the antithesis of precision. When you act impulsively, you play their game. But when you extend time, delay confrontation, and withdraw when they anticipate a push, you seize control of the rhythm, and control of rhythm equates to control of outcome. Let them ignite with anger. You respond with silence. Let them scream your name. You remain mute. Let them assume victory. You simply wait. Because while they expend energy attempting to provoke you, you are tightening the noose around their own errors. The adversary who mistakes your silence for weakness becomes arrogant, and arrogance blinds. That's when time shifts in your favor, when they cease defending and begin exposing themselves. Patience is not passivity. It is the most deliberate act of power. It signifies that you have mastered yourself before attempting to master others. It signifies that you've foregone the immediate gratification of striking first for the certainty of finishing last, and finishing decisively. Machiavelli never acted hastily. He allowed paranoia, ego, and miscalculation to erode his adversaries from within. Then, once they were isolated and weakened, he moved, not with fanfare or fury, but cleanly. That's how time wins battles others didn't even realize had begun. When you learn to move at a slower pace than the world, you perceive more than the world, and in that pause between reaction and response, you gain the advantage. The individual who can postpone gratification, delay conflict, and hold their tongue is the one who endures long enough to dominate, not with aggression, but with a patience that cuts far deeper than any blade. A solitary enemy is a vulnerable enemy, and Machiavelli understood that before any strike, the target must be isolated. The true peril in any confrontation isn't the individual themselves, but their network, their allies, their influence, their momentum. As long as they are surrounded by support, they are emboldened. However, once they stand alone, even the most formidable begin to doubt themselves. Isolation isn't merely a tactic, it's the bedrock of a flawless strike. You don't conquer your enemy by charging headfirst. You weaken them by systematically dismantling their support structure, quietly and patiently. You sow seeds of doubt in their relationships, create friction within their alliances, and plant questions that fester in private conversations. Gradually, the people they relied upon begin to distance themselves. Hands disappear, confidence wavers, and they start to notice the growing silence in which paranoia thrives. The moment your target begins to wonder, "Why is no one standing by me?" you've already won half the battle. They will feel exposed, unstable, vulnerable, and that is precisely when you make your move, not with noise or vengeance, but with the precision of someone who waited for the foundation to crumble beneath them. In the art of psychological warfare, isolation is the scalpel that cuts far deeper than any direct confrontation ever could. You don't need to humiliate them. You simply need to ensure that no one else comes to their defense when you act. Confrontation in a crowd breeds chaos. Confrontation in silence breeds control. Let others label it cold or ruthless, but this is how power is wielded without becoming messy. You don't destroy their reputation. You dissolve their influence. You don't dismantle the person. You pull the thread until their support system collapses. And when the dust settles, no one remembers the fight. They only recall that the target vanished without a sound, without a backup plan. That's how you strike without lifting a finger. You isolate, then erase them from the board. In life, victory doesn't always belong to the loudest, the fastest, or the most aggressive. The true advantage lies with those who are strategic, silent, and emotionally in control. One of the most crucial lessons from Machiavelli's principles is that power isn't about domination. It's about positioning. You don't need to respond to every insult with fury. You don't need to win every argument. What you need is to first master yourself, observe without reacting, and strike only when the moment guarantees impact. Whether you're navigating a toxic relationship, workplace politics, or betrayal, the message remains clear. Patience is protection, and silence is power. Don't allow your emotions to become someone else's weapon. Learn to isolate problems, control your public image, and never confront from a position of weakness. Let time reveal your strength. In a world that rewards impulsivity and noise, your calm is your greatest weapon. Move in silence, think 5 steps ahead, and never grant anyone more access to your inner peace than they have genuinely earned. The more unpredictable and composed you become, the more untouchable you are. That's not just strategy, it's survival.